A very good morning to everyone present here today. Let me begin with a confession. In grade 9, I delivered a TEDx student talk on this very stage, and I was absolutely certain it was the perfect speech. It had immaculate vocabulary, it had quotes from leaders, it had pauses, dramatic ones, and even hand gestures, which I practiced in front of a mirror several times. Which, by the way, is far less inspirational than it sounds. I spoke about leadership, responsibility, unity. When I finished, a friend came up to me and said, "That was really good." So I asked what part stood out. He paused, and then he said, uh, "The part where you said stuff." That moment, I learned something uncomfortable. They heard me, but they didn't remember me. And that realization has shaped every word I've spoken since. Because in a world drowning in content, where we skip, swipe, scroll, skim, the real question is not can you speak, but the question is can you stay? We assume communication is simple. If I say it clearly, you'll remember it. If I repeat it loudly, it will stick. But the human brain is not a recording device. In the 19th century, psychologist Herman Ebbinghaus mapped what we now call the forgetting curve. His research showed that without reinforcement, we forget nearly half of newly learned information within an hour and a half. Which means, even if I speak brilliantly for 10 minutes, by lunchtime, much of it has dissolved. That's not a failure of attention, it's biology. Memory is not about exposure, it is about encoding. And encoding requires meaning. Neuroscience tells us that emotion strengthens memory consolidation. When we feel something, fear, surprise, joy, the brain marks that moment as significant. Psychologist Jerome Brunner famously suggested that we are far more likely to remember information when it is structured as a story rather than as raw data, which means if it doesn't move you, it won't stay with you. So I stopped asking, how do I sound impressive? And I started asking, how do I design a moment? That shift changed everything. Over time, I distilled something simple, a framework I call MAP. Because if you want people to remember your idea, you must help them map it in their minds. 3 principles, not 10, not 20, just 3. M stands for make it personal. Information informs, stories transform. You may not remember last semester formulas, but you remember embarrassment. You remember courage. You remember that awkward hallway moment you could erase from history. Why? Because memory attaches to emotions. The next time I spoke publicly, I didn't begin with statistics. I began with this. I once failed a maths test because I was too afraid to ask a question. Suddenly, people leaned forward, not because the story was extraordinary, but because it was human. Perfection is distant, authenticity is magnetic. When we feel something, when we speak personally, we give people something to anchor to, a face, a feeling, a flaw, and flaws are memorable. A stands for add surprises. The brain is a prediction machine. Every second, it anticipates what comes next. So when a pattern breaks, attention spike. That's why plot twists work, why whisper can silence a room, and why humor lands harder than rehearsed seriousness. Once, instead of saying public speaking is scary, I said, public speaking won't kill you, but your brain thinks it might. People laughed, but more importantly, they remembered it. Because surprise creates interruption. Interruption creates imprint. Surprise doesn't mean shock, it means contrast. A pause when noise is expected. A question when answers are expected. A story when statistics are expected. Memorability lives in the unexpected turn. P stands for package it simply. Complexity feels intelligent. Clarity is intelligent. Psychologist George A. Miller proposed that our working memory can only hold a limited number of items at once. When we overload it, retention drops. Which means this: if you give people too much, you give them nothing. The most powerful ideas in the world are simple, not simplistic. Simple. Repeatable, portable, transferable. Just do it. Think different. I have a dream. Simple phrases, global impact. If people cannot repeat your idea, they cannot remember your idea. Clarity is generosity. I decided to test MAP during a school assembly. One personal story, one unexpected twist, one clear takeaway. And at the end, I said, if you forget everything else today, remember this. Confidence is in the absence of fear. It is speaking even when fear is present. 2 weeks later, before a debate competition, a junior student came up to me. She said, I was nervous, but I remembered what you said. In that moment, I understood something profound. Being remembered is not about applause, it's about action. Applause fades, action continues. We are the most connected generation in history and the most distracted. We scroll through thousands of words daily. Algorithms compete for attention. Notification fracture focus into fragments. In this environment, volume is easy, influence is rare. Whether you're pitching a startup, interviewing for a job, leading a classroom, advocating for a cause, or standing up for someone who cannot stand up for themselves. Being memorable is not vanity, it is responsibility. Because ideas shape decisions, decisions shape systems, and systems shape lives. If your idea deserves to exist, it deserves to endure. I sometimes think back to that grade 9 speech, a polished vocabulary, the practiced gestures, the empty residue, and I'm grateful for it because it taught me this. Communication is not performance, it is imprint. The measure of a message is not how it sounds in the room, but what survives outside it. So the next time you speak, don't ask, did they hear me? Ask, what will remain when I'm gone? Make it personal, add surprises, package it simply, MAP. Because ideas don't survive by accidents, they survive by design. And in the end, it's not about being heard, it is about being remembered. Thank you.